patient at the ambulance would have to come down from Miles City and then take them to the airport in Miles City and then transport them to Billings or wherever. We evaluated initially, I think, 9 sites. Kind of a tabletop survey with mapping to figure out where potential airport sites might be. Once those sites were evaluated, we actually flew them and kind of get a feel for what they might be like as you flew into these sites, and then we just took some general criteria and made some evaluations based on that. Topography, soil conditions, is it easy to get to? Can the runway be oriented in the proper direction with respect to the winds? Are there obstructions to airspace? What's the terrain like around the airport? Can you build a crosswind if necessary? And what is the proximity of the airport to the town of Broadus? We distilled all that, and we basically came up with, I think in this case, 3 sites that were feasible and deserved a detailed look at. Went through the environmental process, developed initial long-term costs, looked at community support, and how feasible were those 3 sites from an aeronautical standpoint, and came up with a preferred site. This isn't coming in real good, but you can see the oval, I guess, in the lower part of the drawing there, and that's the old airport. It was to the south of the airport was the Powder River. We had wildlife concerns there. The airport set in a floodplain. We weren't able to extend the airport to the southerly direction because of the river. We were constrained on the north because there was a highway and some terrain concerns north of the airport. And so those are kind of the primary problems. The airport was finally relocated to the oval up top, and I think the next slide shows a little better representation of that airport. But this is the new airport. What was constructed was a 4,400 foot by 70 foot wide runway. Had a partial parallel taxiway, room for the construction of hangars, boundary fence, access road, a lighted runway with nav aids. Fuel system was added last year. Land acquisition consisted of about 160 acres. It was fairly uncomplicated and simple. We did have a landowner who we were able to negotiate with and acquire the land. We did go through the uniform land acquisition and relocation assistance program. That, as the right-of-way ladies mentioned, that is a requirement for receiving federal funds. So there is a defined process that has to be gone through, basically to establish just compensation, make sure just compensation is offered to the property owners, and then the negotiations begin. The project took a while to complete. I think the initial works was started in the early 90s. The community support wasn't there at the time. The leadership of the county wasn't very supportive of an airport. So the planning work got done and it just sat. Then when it did resurrect itself in the early 2000s, community support was there. The county commissioners were more supportive of an airport, and the project moved forward. Total cost was about $3.4 million. The project was funded at 95% by the FAA. The state kicked in about 2%, and the county picked up the remaining 3%. These are eligible project costs. There were really no ineligible project costs associated with this project. There isn't sewer and there isn't water at the airport, and those are usually the two main ineligible costs that one would see at a smaller GA airport.
What was the population of that county?
I bet it's less than 5,000 people, would be my guess.
I'm sure you're right.
Yes, it's a fairly rural and remote county. I think the town is probably on the order of 800 to 1,000 people. The next example, and this airport was just completed within the last 2 years, is the Poplar, Montana airport. Poplar is located in northeastern Montana. It's on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation. And the old airport was located, I guess, in the very northwest corner of town. It had some real concerns with it. It was surrounded by residential housing. It had a river to the northwest, so there were wildlife concerns. Unable to expand the airport, lengthen the runway. So it did have some real constraints. Again, we looked at 5 sites that were reasonable and feasible, and then those were whittled down to about 2 sites that were studied in detail for the environmental process. Again, the oval on the bottom, you can see where the airport lies with respect to the town of Poplar. Had a highway on the south, couldn't extend to the south. Had a river on the north, couldn't extend to the north. Had residential housing on both sides of the airport, which posed some real safety concerns. The airport was relocated about 1.5 miles northwest of town. I believe a 4,400 foot by 75 foot wide runway was constructed. We were also able to work into the project a kind of a crosswind turf runway. We were able to do that because we needed to do a significant amount of earthwork on the airport site, and we were able to manage to make our earthwork work out so that we could turn it into a crosswind runway in the end. And here's what the Poplar Airport looks like. About a 4,400 foot runway, a 2,000 foot crosswind runway, parallel taxiway, hangar access taxi lanes, wildlife fence access road, electrical. There's quite a bit more land acquisition involved with this, planning and environmental. The project cost on here is nearly $8 million, so it's almost twice as much as the Broadus Airport. Construction costs were the main reason for the increase in cost. Soils were quite a bit different, the pavement structure was quite a bit different, which in turn related to higher project costs. The timing of the project, we were able to build Broadus, I guess maybe a little more earlier, a little more favorable construction environment out there compared to Poplar. The fixed base operator, or the business working off the airport, relocated to the new airport. He constructed about a 100 by 100 foot hangar and also constructed a fleet fueling system. Those costs were not part of the project cost, and the FBO on the airport funded those improvements himself. Quite a bit of discussion has centered around a regional airport for the Colville community. And this is kind of, it gives you an idea of what a regional airport might consist of. In this case, what's being considered is a 5,000 foot by 7,500 foot runway. There would be apron area. There would be taxi lanes for the construction of hangars. There would be a full-length parallel taxiway, fueling system, perhaps a small terminal, and basically it would meet all FAA criteria. One of the other things that a regional airport has is the ability to fly instrument approaches into the airport. And so the airport would also have weather available to the airport so that instrument approaches could be flown. The type of aircraft that would use a regional airport and what the state would like, what the state defines in a regional airport is that basically any general aviation aircraft under 40,000 pounds would have the ability to use this airport. And this is pretty representative of that range of aircraft that would use it. It'd be anything from small single-engine aircraft up to, you know, medium-sized business jets that weigh on the order of 40,000 pounds, and then anything in between. Most air ambulances in Montana are either the Super King Air or a King Air 100. They weigh around 12,500 pounds. Your business jets, you know, can weigh anywhere from 16,000 pounds up to 60,000 pounds. But what's trying to be accommodated in a regional airport would be aircraft that weigh 40,000 pounds or less. I guess this is what a regional airport might look like. This is an airport in Laurel, Montana. Project was completed in 2002. It was one of those airports where we did the planning, the site selection work, and the environmental work, but the airport remained where the airport is. We did have to acquire a significant amount of property to do the project, but this would give you a pretty good idea of what a regional airport might look like. We have a 5,200-foot runway here. It's based on temperature and elevation. There is a full-length parallel taxiway, even though it does have a jog from one end to the other. We have an apron for storing transient aircraft. We have a fixed-base operator on the airport who can provide fuel service, major airframe and power plant repairs. We have hangar rentals on the airport. We have weather. We have nav aids. So I think this is a very good representation of what a regional airport might look like in Caldwell. That project was completed in 2002. Again, it was about a $4.2 million project, and FAA funded essentially 95% of eligible project costs, and there were very few ineligible project costs on this project. Some of the airport improvements were funded at a 90% level because at the time FAA funded 90% rather than 95%. And the state funded about 2%, and the Laurel Airport Authority funded 3%. One of the interesting things about this airport is the ownership of the airport. While it's called a municipal airport, the actual owners of the airport is the Laurel Airport Authority. And this really made this project doable in my mind for a couple of reasons. Basically, the Laurel Airport Authority works under the umbrella of the city of Laurel. So the airport authority was created by the city of Laurel appointing an airport board, or an airport authority. And that airport authority has contracting capabilities. It signs the FAA granted contracts with the FAA for projects. It does all the hiring of consultants and contractors. It signs the contracts. So that makes it simple. But it also takes all the heat that the city council or the city of Laurel might otherwise have to take. So basically what the city of Laurel has to do is they basically approve the budget and appoint